I love the fact of your awareness that we all really do have to create these maps for ourselves, or that we gather these maps and find out what works for us. So tell us a little more about how a person might gather either these maps or others that may come to them, and how they begin to work with them or put it all together.
Okay. Now, for me, I really had to go into an evolutionary context in order to handle all these big maps that I have. I think it's a good suggestion. I think it's, if you're going to choose some maps, to choose maps that have comprehensiveness to them, and then choose the ones, like I said, that choose you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the choices now that become really interesting, because it'll become who you become in the world. And Brian Swimme has some extraordinary work out there. He's an evolutionary biologist. And his story that really struck or has stayed with me is he claims that at one point in time there was an animal on this planet that was neither a horse nor a bison. And then life conditions descended upon this animal species, and part of the species, in response to those conditions, fled the conditions.
Mm-hmm.
They became a horse, the horse as we now know it. The other part of the species chose to stay still in those conditions, and he says that is now the animal we know as the bison. Evolved into that. That's what they became. So the lesson for us as humans is what are the choices that we make in response to the conditions that we have out there, is going to determine who we become. Now, I know I came in here to go first. I mean, I can see that even in my own life experience, to go first on a lot of these things, to learn it before other people had learned it. That's just part of what is the blueprint I came in with, that I had the coding to. And that my challenge now in wholeness is to put myself in the conditions that are going to activate and develop these codes. I'm telling you about them because, maybe it's something that's going to help you as well, in terms of you getting the blueprint that you came in fulfilled, that we become who we have the potential to become because we're coded for it. We have the blueprint for it. Right. And the maps you choose obviously are going to be one of those things, what's the worldview? How are you seeing the world? Is going to make a big difference to that process.
So tell me a little more about how this man's work affected you. The
Brian
evolutionary.
Swimme's?
Yes.
Well, I would say that as I'm filling in my, I've got the big maps, what I can do is they're helping me map out and connect to all the rest of the work that's out there. So in finding this world view, there's a place for everything else that exists out there. Everything else that exists out there. Then it becomes a matter of which piece does it fill in for me? What little part of the territory does it light up for me? What is that the pieces of Brian's work that make sense to me that I can use with that.
So it really does bring it down to more and more personal choice. I can choose this, and I can choose this, and I can choose this.
I think so, looking at the choices that one has made in their life, I think is a fascinating study.
It is.
It's a fascinating
It absolutely
study.
is.
It's a fascinating study. And the way I look at it is, most of us think that we're a whole lot more at choice than what we really are. Most of us think we're a whole lot more free than what we really are. And it starts to get shocking, just shocking, when you see how little choicefulness we make because we're in a reaction, because of the programming that I have when I was young, because of the level at which that I'm playing, because of all the cultural pieces that come into play.
So we often go into automatic response.
Automatic response on this
Thinking
stuff.
we're making a choice.
Thinking we're making a choice, but I mean, there's a perspective out there that says humanity is quite enslaved
Mm-hmm.
inside of the conditions that we're in here. I mean, that's a really advanced, in my view, kind of understanding of the world, but there is a perspective on that. So for me, part of looking at choicefulness is how to expand my choices, which these maps help me do. So there's making choices between a spectrum of choices that's this big, and then there's making choices in the spectrum of choices that's this big, and how to expand those choices. So the wholeness piece for me is, am I able to even make choices from this wide of spectrum versus this wide of spectrum? There's a whole practice and a lot of stuff that I've worked on to just expand the spectrum.
Right.
Well, then there's that piece. Then there is when these choices come at you, do you see them? Because even though I might have the capacity to make these choices, can I see the choices when they show up?
Mm-hmm.
And then, if I can see them, which one do I choose and why? So part of this whole process, and you know, for me to do the work that I've done, I really had to have an evolutionary context. So people like Brian Swimme that are bringing in more of this evolutionary understanding of where humanity has been, where we're going, where life has been, where we're going, really helpful in terms of helping me understand how to make personal choices inside of that. And to start to understand, like, when they show up, what am I choosing and why? Well, for me, just, you know, because I was led to the things that I was led to, you know, I'm wanting to make, there's an evolutionary leap. I mean, this was Clare Graves', you know, astounding revelation to himself, I think, and to the world of the work that he was finding as a professor of psychology at Union College in Schenectady, New York, was that he said 40 years ago, it's at least 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that humanity is on the verge, is getting prepared for a momentous leap, is what Clare Graves said. And he was starting to see, because he was uncovering these intelligences, that the intelligences that he was seeing to come online 40 years ago were a momentous leap compared to the intelligences that he was finding that had already existed in mankind. The capacity and the capability, the potential that that we're getting ready to fulfill is so much grander than it has been for any of these other smaller evolutionary leaps that we've made.
Fascinating.
I thought it was
Yes.
fascinating to me.
Yes.
Fascinating. So part of it is in making choices then, are you going to make the leap or are you not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is part of it, is these conditions that are coming on, are we going to spiral down or are we going to spiral up? Well, the fact of the matter is we're going to do a little of both, but, you know, the big picture of it, trying to spiral up. So the other practice that I've had with these questions, or these maps, is the questions I ask, because I do believe, and here would be one of my, if I'm trying to illuminate the territory that I've been in, one of the markings that I would make would be this, that we grow toward the questions we ask. So to start with, like, look at the questions you're asking.
Yes.
You know, and then as you ask those questions, you can start to grow into them. Well, the questions that I have been asking myself for the last 10 years since I came across Spirodynamics, you know, have been that, is what is this momentous leap? What are these second-tier intelligences, as they're named? The other question is, how will they solve our problems? You know, can they solve our problems? And then the third one is, you know, do I have what it takes to make the leap? So those have been the questions that I've kept at the forefront. Again, 3, I'm noticing, you know, 3 questions to ask simultaneously to grow toward. And so I'm looking for these maps. I'm looking at choices, because I know the choices that I make inside of that are going to be part of the determinant of whether I make the leap and whether I can help use some of this to solve our problems. And you know, I've had to understand certainly the nature of whatever it is to know what to choose. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Can I differentiate what came before versus what is emerging? You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Choice points.
Choice points. Huge choice points.
Choice points that will affect literally an evolutionary leap for an individual and for humanity.
I would get really clear about that. People are going to choose into this.
Mm-hmm.
And choose into it because you can choose into it. Choose into it because you stumble into it through reaction or response, or choose or not choose into it because you're choosing something else.
Right,
And
right.
how to know the difference. Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
great.
Cool.
Thanks, Sherry. I look forward to our continuing discussion.
Me too, Janet. This is fun.